All right, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Inside the Agency podcast. We're diving into something that's close to me and I've seen personally as part of working with agencies myself. And I can recall dozens of conversations where agency owners are like, I haven't taken leave in forever because if I do, things will just collapse. We're growing, but I don't feel free. I'm swamped and I fail to prioritize my time for what I want to do. Doing the late nights, jumping between client calls and campaign tweaks and showing up, but also silently burning out. You've got clients, more revenue, maybe even a bigger team, but also more Slack messages, more firefighting, and less time to think, which is what we're diving into today with our topic: why so many agency owners stay stuck and how to break out to build freedom. This is for anyone who's still deep in delivery mode, stuck in operations, or just wondering if growth always has to come at the cost of their life. And that's exactly why we're kicking this episode off with the perfect person. Joining me is Chris Rudolph, agency coach and founder at Freedom Agency, someone who spent the last decade helping agency owners scale without burning out. Chris has been featured on some of the biggest platforms like Agora Pulse, Fox, NBC, CBS, and he's helped agency owners finally take Fridays off and trust their teams and get out of their own way. So, Chris, welcome to Inside the Agency.
It's great to be here, Sam.
For those listening, how about you share a bit about yourself and how closely you've seen what we're covering today and how important it is to you as part of your approach to coaching agencies?
Yeah, well, I love working with agency founders. I've been working with agency founders for like basically on a weekly basis for the last decade, and love this community. And I can't think of a better group of people. Like if you were going to be at a conference with anyone, that's who I'd want to be with. People that genuinely care about their clients and the type of marketing that they're putting out for their clients. And yeah, just really value a lot of the same things I do. So I love working with them. There are definitely a lot of challenges. If you kind of do what everyone else is doing in the space, a lot of times you get some of the same symptoms and the same issues as everyone does. So I love helping agency founders be able to navigate that and really achieve freedom.
Amazing. Same here. So my own work revolves a lot around digital agencies and what I do. So absolutely, I completely agree. And also what they try to build out, and once it's out there, it's always amazing and impacts so many other people through their marketing and what they do, whether it's a small business that they're helping get more leads or whether it's a global campaign that's going live for an e-commerce brand. The impact is just felt everywhere. So while we're going into this, I see most agencies being formed one way or another by someone who's like, I'm great at building websites, or I was at that huge marketing firm that does paid ads, but I want to do something on my own. I want to start my own thing. I want to do all of that on my own terms and maybe build more happiness around my business, build more freedom. But when they say that, what do they mean? What does freedom mean in your experience for an agency owner before we go into chasing it?
Yeah, I know that word freedom and what they have in mind for freedom can be very different, but a lot of times you can put it into a few buckets. One is financial freedom, the second would be time freedom, or some combination of both. So that's what I really see, and I see them viewing their agency as a vehicle for that. I don't typically see agency founders, when they start and really envision their agency being the
Yeah.
end all, but as a vehicle that delivers the freedom, whether that's financial, time, or a combination of both.
Absolutely. I think those are the big two, but I think there's also, freedom of who I want to work with, the kind of clients I want to work with, which industry I want to create impact in maybe, or where I want to work from. Sometimes, marketing is something that you can kind of do it from anywhere. So maybe that's something also on their mind. But yeah, it ends up being a combination of a few things, and what that means for everyone ends up being different in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of common ground that we can explore here for most listeners.
Yeah, for sure.
So, why do so many agency owners who started this to do things on their own terms and be more flexible and chase freedom, why do they end up working some of the longest hours known to mankind and end up
Oh
being stuck?
man, I know it's wild, and I want to definitely, that's part of my mission to change that. But everyone has a different story on how they got into things. Until recently, you couldn't really get a degree in these things. So people,
Yeah.
have come from all different backgrounds, and I love hearing their stories. But there is kind of a common origin story. Either they worked at a big agency or in corporate,
Yep.
and they're really good at what they do. Maybe it's creating websites or social media or doing ads or SEO, things like that. And what they do is, they have a dream for something more freedom, be able to make a greater impact, and they go off on their own solo. And if they're really good at what they do, they grow.
Yeah.
So the demands increase, and so they have to start hiring other people to do
Yeah.
those things. But now they're thrust in a position that not many agency founders I meet are natural CEOs, or they even had the idea that they were going to have to function like a CEO. They were just like, they're good at doing their thing. So now they're thrust in a position where they have to lead people, they have to delegate, and do HR and those type of things.
Yeah.
And when you're doing something that you're not naturally good at or have the skills on, it makes it that much harder. It takes that many more hours and
Yeah.
taxing. So that kind of continues, and still things grow, and maybe they receive, their reputation grows, and maybe they receive awards, or, they have a lot of like street cred.
Yeah.
So on the outside, it looks like everything is going well, but, they end up in a place where you said exactly, where they're working more hours and it's more taxing.
Yeah.
Um, than where they were before. So I really think it's they grew to a level of almost incompetence at
Yeah.
the time, and I think left like just to try trial and error, or just as things are going, that's where you'll naturally end up if you're not really strategic.
Yeah, absolutely. I think along the way, what they set out to do actually starts, coming into existence, and they have more clients, more projects, more work. They have to start putting on these different hats that, like you said, they're not used to. They're not used to being an HR specialist. And again, let's not even get into finance and all the other things they have to get into for their agency. And that kind of, I think, it's something they might not have considered initially. But when it hits them, I think that's when they start just get buried under these layers of different things that kind of hinders with the freedom. So I think let's just talk about the problem a little bit more. One thing that I've seen very commonly with agencies is that hustle is still either very much normalized or sometimes even worn like a badge of honor, where the more an agency owner is working, sometimes it's seen as a sign of how successful they are. But let's talk about it. What does that do to you physically, mentally, and how long can you sustain that? Because what happens when people stay in that hustle mode too long?
Yeah, I actually, so my very first business, like over 20 years ago, I was in health and wellness. So I actually have a lot of insight on the physiology behind it. And a lot of times, if you're really like burning the candle at both ends, pedal to the metal,
Yeah.
the human body, after, for most people, it takes like 2 to 3 years where you start to see breakdown just physically, when you're on adrenaline all the time. And the thing about that is it's addicting. Like when you're on adrenaline and things are exciting, and the pressure is on, it's like kind of like a painkiller, so you don't feel the weight of everything that's going on
Yeah.
physiologically, and it's addicting. So that's where you see, a lot of times in the startup culture, people that are, it becomes like almost an obsession, but you do start to see breakdown. And it's not till someone, a lot of times hits rock bottom, and they're forced to take a break,
Yeah.
because of something, they get sick, or they have injuries, or just they're just done. Is when you come off that adrenaline high that you actually start to feel it, and then it's really rough, and even psychologically, like common like depression and things like that. So that's one thing, but yeah, so that's really common physiologically, and it's something, you get affirmed for the work that you're doing. So like if you're hustling all the time and producing great things, you're getting that positive feedback as well.
Yeah.
But here's where the rubber meets the road, is when if you start a family. That's where a lot of times,
Yeah.
if you're single and or even if you're married and you have a spouse that maybe has an intense career or is understanding, maybe you can keep that up. But what I've seen, the inflection point is when people start to have kids, you can't continue that kind of pace and not pay the consequences on the relational side.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of times a lot of people come to me for help, or people that are really proactive come to me for help in that season, because then you have a limited time, and you only have so much energy. You have a lot more responsibility. And I remember people that as I share like how I help people when they were, that would kind of like mock that, or like, yeah, right, who really thinks about that. And they were like single, and then I see years later when they start to have a family, they're hitting some of those same roadblocks, and now they're actually, like, many of them are actually coaching people on the same things, which is ironic.
Yeah.
So a lot of times you don't know what you don't know until you're in that part. Now, that could be starting your own family, or you have parents or relatives that maybe that are ailing or are elderly that you're
Yeah.
taking care of. That could be another stressor or responsibility. So that's really, I think, where people hit the wall when it comes to hustle culture.
Yeah. So I think I completely agree, because then there's so many things I can link to from here, because firstly, mental health itself, it's something I believe in very much so, and it's part of the benefits we offer at our company. Everyone has access to licensed therapists because we believe that's so important. And again, burnout is silent because it's kind of masked by your positive reinforcement for doing a good job, or just getting things done. But I also believe early stage businesses, when you've just started out doing what you're doing, you feel like you need to go above and beyond and just give it everything. Everything needs to be done now. Everything needs to be done yesterday, because I need to get this thing going, because I have so much riding on this that I can't afford for it to not work. But I think initially sometimes that can work. Maybe you're really motivated and driven to get something off the ground. But I also over time understood what working hours mean, what signing off means, and shutting off the laptop and not answering every email right away. And I think having those boundaries and all of that is really important, because you can only do this for so long. And I myself, the health roadblock you talked about, I went through that myself. And then I realized that, okay, so round the clock, it just can't work.
Well, actually, I have something I wanted to add there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so there's a law of diminishing returns. We are human beings, and you see this a lot in economics and
Yeah.
different things. But like the law of diminishing returns is after, the research says after like 30 really good hours, like productivity starts to decline and some of the negative aspects.
Yeah.
So like when you start to hit 50, like pain increases. So you're actually not efficient, and sometimes your work isn't as good, and your creativity suffers when you go beyond that. So I just want to add that because I think that's a really key piece that we don't think about.
Yeah, I think you're better off taking that break at that point, because the time you're putting in, it's not resulting in the kind of work you'd want to do. So yeah, great point there as well. So I think from here on, we've established the problem. We've understood why we need freedom and why all of this is bad. But let's put this into a practical example. Say I'm an agency owner. I'm doing 25, 30, maybe 40K a month. I'm working 50 or 60-hour weeks right now. A lot of agency owners are actually doing more. They might be seeing that rookie numbers, but yeah, I'm stuck in a loop of acquisition, finding new clients, deliveries, giving them what they've, signed up for, and then management, doing those client calls, keeping them, retaining them. Where do I start if I want to build freedom? What's the first thing I need to do?
Yeah, I think the first thing, what I found is, so in order to, delegate, and, a lot of times if you're playing all those roles, if you're kind of the project manager, you're the doer, or you're the account manager, or you're doing the sales and marketing, or you're doing a combination of all those things, those will require systems, whether you're doing it yourself
Yeah.
to be effective, or you're hiring someone or having your existing team do it. So building systems and taking actions requires time. So if your plate is already over full,
Yeah.
you don't have time to really build those out, or you start building them, and then a emergency comes up, or a fire that you have to put out, and you lose momentum. And what I found is that's very demotivating.
Yeah.
Like when you see what you want to do, you make a little progress, and then you got to abandon it, and then you don't even remember, like you come back to it and you don't even remember what you're doing.
Yeah.
Uh, So what I like to do is like, how can we free up time personally? And it's kind of like, let's look at self leadership and self time management first. So a lot of times we look at the calendar, and the habit that has made the biggest difference for every one of my clients is what I call the daily one thing, where you spend at least the first hour of your workday before you tap into email, Slack messages, text messages with your team or clients. You work on the one thing that's going to really make the difference and work on your agency first. And that just increases productivity just because there always will be fires and there's external pressure from clients and team members. But you got to create some space to actually get things done.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's like the very first step I would say to doing that. You got to have time to be able to build.
Yeah. I think when it comes to building systems, creating that doc, creating that workflow, creating that Loom video explaining what you're doing, those are really important. But I feel like sometimes when an agency owner is trying to do that, and there comes that next client fire that needs to be put out, that kind of gets put on the back seat. And I believe that a project that you start or something that you start and leave midway is actually worse than something you never started, because odds are you're never going to go back to that one, but you might still start that other thing that you thought I'm going to do someday. So yeah, I think the systems, and then also having people, that is the first thing you need to start doing. But when it comes to people, there's the other problem agency owners face a lot of times, and that's trust and not being able to delegate. They've been pulling all of these strings so hands-on for so long for every one of their clients. They've built these relationships. They've put all of these things in place where they're now really deep into all of that work, where if anyone else comes in to do it, they'll not be able to delegate that. They might just start micromanaging it. That too, if they did go over that hurdle of hiring someone for that. So, and especially for founders who've been burned before, where they did hire someone, but that person really dropped the ball on a project or created some issues where a client exited. I think for them, it's even more difficult to get over that barrier. So let's talk about trust for a second, and how can agency owners become delegators rather than doers themselves?
Oh yeah, you hit it. It's like probably the hardest thing. I think it might be the hardest like barrier to overcome when I'm working
Yeah.
with clients, especially the first hire or the first hire that has like leadership responsibility is a really big one. And I think there's a couple things that come to mind. One is I would say like based on your budget, try to go with and you get overall you get what you pay for, but it doesn't mean just because you pay you're going to get someone. You have to really vet that person well.
Yeah.
But don't go inexpensive. Go with someone who's like higher level.
Yeah.
Even and I look at like we do a simple calculation of like how much are you paying yourself per hour. Now sometimes this can be a little shocking if you're in that camp and you're working like 60, 70, 80 hours a week and you're be like, boy, this is all I'm paying myself. But take a look at, figure out what you're paying yourself per hour. And if you can find someone, obviously, if you can find someone who's really qualified and skilled that can do that less, let's say you're paying yourself $50 an hour. If you can find someone that can pay you can pay $20 an hour and they can just take it and run with it. You
Yeah.
have time leverage there. But at the beginning, you might not have a huge budget. I would even go like if you can pay someone equal or a little bit less than you, but you can trust them and they have leadership capabilities and they'll free you up. I would do it. I would make that trade. The second thing I think with hiring is especially for other than roles that are like sales or account management, where like a face-to-face or over Zoom interview, they get to demonstrate the skills that are important for that and that. But for technical roles like project management or like a technical role like they're setting up ads or building websites or SEO or organic social, a face-to-face interview, you might get to know them and get to know some of their values and their that overall first impression, but you don't actually get to see their skills in place. So I'm really big on giving them it could be a paid first project.
Yeah.
And I'll do that with like 2 to 3 of your front running candidates and then put them up side by side and see how they respond and really see how they can demonstrate whether it's a project or other parts of the process, even the application process or the interview process, really being intentional of building that to demonstrate the qualities that you need to see. So you get an idea because there is a risk, but you want to limit your risk. And a lot of times you just want to be very particular on that first hire and don't go, cheap.
Yeah.
It sounds have a good experience, and then it's going to help you let go, because that's the hardest part, is letting go.
Yeah.
And then when you see what's possible, you'd be like, oh boy, why did I wait to do this so long? And
Yeah.
what's the next role I can hire for next?
Absolutely. I think it's a light bulb moment where you're like, wow, I can now do this for so many more people and not burn out while doing it. But some of the other things you also touched on, how much are you paying yourself? I think that's a great question. Even I suggest to agency owners when they're trying to figure out what role should they hire for, because if a lot of their time is being spent on something that can, like you said, be given to someone who'd be happy to do it for less, and you can then focus your time on tasks that are more higher value, that's a great starting point as well, I think, to identify what role should I hire for first. And then assessments that you talked about, I think with my work and agencies and talent and how I support them, I think that's something a lot of agencies are doing right now. But I give them one suggestion to take it even further. I suggest that take one of your client campaigns, get rid of all the confidential information, put all the challenges you're facing on that campaign right now, whether it's a high CPC or whether it's low impressions, whatever you're facing, and give it to them to see how they would approach it. You literally have firsthand information of what they would do on their first day facing that challenge, because now you've given them an actual challenge that your company is facing right now. And this is what they would do once they join. So you have assessment platforms and they're great. And obviously you should be pairing that with interviews. But if you build your own assessments, I think it's a gold mine to now see how would that candidate approach this client in this industry, the one I'm struggling with right now. So yeah, I think those are also great points to make informed decisions and just make it less of a gamble, because a bad hire is more cost in the long term. Now if you're looking at a bad hire, you're going to be even more cautious of hiring, delegating in the future, and then the time spent training someone, the cost of salaries, it's just too much to then turn back and fix. So yeah, completely agree with those points. So we've touched a little bit on systems and hiring. I think maybe we could go back to just systems for a bit more, because I know we went deeper into hiring. When you talk about systems, what do you suggest agency owners mostly to do? How should they go about doing their tasks in a way where if they were to let go of it today, they have enough information to hand over to someone?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, where the first thing is that you want to delegate is things that you're doing, like the actual client work. As long as it's not, maybe there's a minority of agency founders that are just amazing at what they do, and you just build a team around, like that maybe they're great at websites or they're great at ads, and that's just like where you come alive. Then you got to build your team around you. But
Yeah.
for the majority, you want to start with things that you already know how to do. And one of the best techniques that I've seen, especially because it's technical, is to take Loom style videos of you actually doing the work.
Yeah.
Where you're it's not just instead of just doing a written guide or just a video guide, you can do both. And it's great with, the advances in AI and technology is that you can use the transcripts, and a lot of times you can download those into AI engines that will even create the step-by-step instructions.
Yeah.
But it's really great for kind of creating like a SOP, but also a library of certain things that
Yeah.
can be searchable. So even you could use something like even Google Drive and just name that video, or if it's a video and a written guide. And I recommend, even if let's say you do something and it takes 20 minutes, break that up into small chunks,
Yeah.
so that's more digestible, more searchable. But also, if especially as you work on these platforms that change sometimes, monthly or on a weekly basis, if you have to go back and reshoot something, or the process changes, you don't have to reshoot everything. You
Yeah.
might just have to reshoot a solo part. So that's something that while you're working and doing it, you can kind of talk it through and show them So no matter what type of learner they are, whether they like written or they like they're visual or they like are experiential, it's going to hit on a variety of different levels.
Yeah.
So you can do it one way. You can do it pretty efficiently because you're actually just doing the work, and
Yeah.
it hits like the learning styles that they have.
Absolutely. I think an important takeaway I'd like anyone who's listening to just have from this is that every Loom recording you make of you doing something, you're safeguarding your time, you're investing in your time to not have to jump on a call and explain it to someone else who joins, someone else who gets replaced, or when you scale your team and you add five more of a position, they can all just go back to that same video. When they run into something, you can just be like, here's the link, you can go and figure it out, and if you still have questions, I'm here. So I think that's just, it's a way of investing in your time so that whenever anything that comes up that might then eat up your time in order to have to jump on a call and explain that, you can just send a link. So yeah, I'm a big believer in Loom and use it regularly. So I think that that's a great suggestion as well. So I think one other thing I wanted to touch on is for those who fear disrupting client work, with someone else coming on or with new talent coming on or hiring or replacing someone or replacing themselves from that position to build freedom, how do you suggest they gradually step back from the day to day without dropping the ball? Because you want to balance, you want to keep the client as well, but you also want to buy back your time. So how do you suggest they do that?
Oh yeah. So most agency founders that I know hire too late, or like, by the time they're doing it, it's kind of like almost an emergency, or they hit rock
Yeah.
bottom. So it can be so tempting to just throw a hot potato and just or give them the keys, a new hire a keys of here, you take it.
Yeah.
Just that might feel good initially, just to like your anxiety, but I really recommend it like more of a intentional mentorship type of experience. Like have them watch you do what you're doing,
Yeah.
have them shadow calls, or you can record them. Obviously, if you create Loom style videos, they can do that, and then let them do some things behind the scenes and just show that they can be faithful and they're understanding it. And then they can be a little bit more public facing and then bring them in. So let's say like for an account manager, this is one that a lot of times there's a big, it's a big transition.
Yeah.
So the agency founder wants to be off all client calls because that takes up a lot of time. They hire an account manager, have them come with you to the calls, and maybe they can start out by taking notes or forwarding the action on your task management software. Answer, maybe some emails even within your email
Yeah.
inbox, and gradually give them more experience and more responsibility. The client gets to know them, and then you can gradually step away. If you have twice a month calls
Yeah.
with the client, maybe you take one of them as an agency founder, and they come with you,
Yeah.
and then they take the other one and just gradually kind of wean back. But they have to be faithful along the way and show their proficiency. So
Yeah.
you want to challenge them, but you want to make sure that they are proven they can do it. And ideally, they are even as good or better than you. You can really train them into that. But that's a way, especially for more public facing roles,
Yeah.
that you can gradually it's a mentorship. Now it takes time, and sometimes that's a challenging thing to like overcome. It's going to take some time, but just think of like the investment of for instance with that account manager role, how many hours per week, if they could take on 5 clients, all the meetings, how much time would that free up?
Yeah.
And just look at it as a long-term investment.
Absolutely. I think that the gradual step away that you've just mentioned here, where you do half the calls maybe than you're doing initially, and then you slowly start to let go. That's a great tip. And I think also your mention of AI, with so many of us now using AI note takers, every call that you're doing right now could actually be contributing to training material for whoever joins later. They can go over the transcript, they can see what words you use, what you avoid, how you try to do the small talk, all of that, all the little nuances that you bring to the table. Because I think it comes back to nuances where you'd be like, you did that a little differently from how I am used to doing it. But if you could even train people on those nuances, you could have it exactly how you want it, and maybe, like you said, even better, because this might be a specialist who's been doing just this for 4 or 5 years of their career. Even with non-technical roles, you could just use your call transcripts or, like we just discussed, Loom recordings, and put that into AI and turn it into an actual training material or a full document that kind of helps you gradually step back and kind of give people the reins and oversee all of that, because you're not stepping back. Let's just talk about stepping back as well for a second. It's not an entirely letting go. You're still overseeing things. You're still keeping a pulse on the agency. You're just trying to make sure you can do more of what you enjoy and prioritize your time. So yeah, I think that's what the goal should be, that stepping back so you can oversee and monitor and still have your input and be heard in all these other areas, but not be stuck.
Yeah, that's a good point. I put it this way, like you want to go from manager to director. So you want to build the systems and the people to where you're directing, like it's kind of like you see it in a big corporation. Like the directors, they're not doing the work. They get reported the outcomes.
Yeah.
And so that's the shift you want to make to like in the director's chair. You're not removed, but you're more focused on the results and troubleshooting the really high level things.
Yeah. So being in that director chair and trying to manage things, and we've talked about how important people are to be able to do that. I just want to now go a bit deeper into hiring, and I think this is a subject that's also really close to me, so I can also chime in. What's one role you've seen that instantly unlocks freedom for agency owners?
Hmm. I think one is executive assistant, especially when they have a high volume of admin tasks. And sometimes it's not as easily noticeable because it's a little here and a little there, but it adds up. That's one thing. And I think also, I mentioned earlier, like getting out of the doing role. So like if let's say you're in charge of the ads, how can you have someone who comes in as maybe kind of like your junior? They can do like the repetitive work at first, just and then you can, as you train them, they can do more of the strategic work. I like to tend to do start out when you're hiring with things so that you have a good pulse on if they are doing it well.
Yeah.
If it's something you don't know how to do, it's hard to like tell if it's being done well. But also then you can easily train them.
Yeah.
And give them a system. So that's what I would say, like some of those technical roles, if you do SEO or you do websites or landing pages, like hiring people that are kind of the doing that are doing the client work, can create freedom, and then you can move on to the next levels.
Yep. I think delivery ends up being the most common answer because that's what takes the most time, doing the work for the client. And then secondly, there is management, the account management role we were talking about. I think those are two key roles. So the delivery role would look different for different agencies. For a web agency, it might be their key developer, or for a performance marketing agency, it might be their paid ad specialist. But I think those are roles that allow the agency owner to step back from delivery and also scale. Now they can do it for more people. Now they can have more clients. And the agency owner can stop being the bottleneck, which is the main goal. So my other question about hiring would be, hiring can be cost prohibitive for agency owners, especially when they're around that 10, 20, 30K mark. They're thinking that if I have to hire someone at $50,000, $60,000 a year, should I do it? Should I not do it? And when I use the word cost prohibitive, what I mean is the answer always comes back to, I'll just keep doing it myself. And that's what prohibits them from actually hiring. But there's so many options today. There's in-house, there's freelance, there's offshore, there's part-time. What would you say to agency owners who are just stuck on one definition of hiring and not getting any help in trying to just chase that definition?
Yeah, you make a really good point of like whatever your filter is or what your view is kind of like influence your decision. So the biggest thing is, that maybe you're like, okay, you think of like your next hire, you want somebody the quality of like a six-figure salary, but you're like, there's no way, like we're not anywhere near close to that. So you just keep the role. So I really think, there's some different factors, but I think it really depends on your stage. If you're at like 2 million a year versus, like 500,000, you're in a very different stage and you need different things. So I actually encourage a lot of times, if you're in a place that's expensive, let's say Australia, New Zealand, US, parts of Canada, where to hire the local talent, you have to really shell out some money. I would look, like offshore, and it's not necessarily you're looking for a $4 an hour virtual assistant, but maybe to find someone who's a quality project manager, that would be at least $50 an hour US.
Yeah.
To hire someone like that, you could look at someone maybe, especially if you need them in the same time zone, maybe you could look at Latin America, somebody who is at that same level, but maybe is half that cost.
Yeah.
Now you still got them. So you pay almost like premium for their country or their area, but you get someone who has a lot higher, just they're very competent and they have really high skills.
Yeah.
And a lot of times, in sometimes the developing world, those are really great jobs, and you have less turnover than you do. Let's say you can afford 50,000 a year for a position. You're maybe in Australia or US or Canada, you're barely, it's a really low, that's almost like a low paying job.
Yeah.
You're more likely to have more turnover there. So you can invest a bunch of time and resources into getting something up to speed. Or if you hire offshore in another country, they might stick with you for 5 or 10 years because it's a great position with their
Yeah.
cost of living.
Absolutely. I think with the nature of marketing, like we said, it's very borderless. So you're very much likely to find someone overseas or in another country who still had that same exposure to the kind of clients you want to work with. For instance, there's so many people, let's say in Pakistan, who have worked with roofing companies in the US, and that's oftentimes a clientele for a digital marketing agency, and they run ads to help them get local clients or help them do local SEO in a state or a city. So you're so likely to run into someone who's had that exposure already, which a lot of times people think they might not have. Maybe they don't get local SEO for the US, or maybe they don't run roofing ads like we do over here, or asphalt or construction or anything else. So I think that's oftentimes a mental hurdle, that if agency owners start just meeting people or just they're open to overseas talent, they'll see that, there's a lot of common ground, because globally marketing is borderless and people are doing those services for clients across countries and time zones.
Yeah, for sure. I just think of like most of the great learning for digital marketing skills is online. Like it's not limited to universities. You think of like HubSpot certifications. You can do that from anywhere that has an internet connection. So
Yeah.
you're really borderless there. So you're not dependent on the level of universities or lack of universities, and it's kind of like a level playing field. So yeah, no matter what country you're in, as long as you have an internet connection, you have access to all the same training and resources and coursework, communities, those type of things. So I think that really works in your favor.
Absolutely. So hiring itself, it can be a time drain when you're trying to look for people. But on top of that, you've hired someone and now you need to do hand holding, and now additional feedback calls and check-ins and hurdles are now on your agenda. And the reason you did this was to protect your time and build freedom. And now you're in more work in terms of training someone and giving them feedback and jumping on calls to tell them what could have been done differently. So how do you think agency owners can deal with this double-edged sword of hiring and, the time drain that comes with having a hire?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a specialist. Like as an agency founder, you're specialized in something. You might as well, in my case, hire the specialists who are good at finding the talent and the hiring and the onboarding and things like that. Just because, yeah, like especially I can think of one agency founder that I've worked with over the last 11 years that had those type of like HR skills, and I think they grew up in a family business where they saw it every day. So like
Yeah.
they were in a rare circumstances, but you can do a trial and error, and you're probably going to struggle, and it's going to take you a lot longer. And the reason you're hiring is because you don't have enough time, or you don't have the expertise. So why not leverage someone who does that every day? Just like clients hire you and your agency because you have a specialty skill, and you can
Yeah.
do it better at a lower cost and more consistent results. Take that same approach and work with somebody who can source that. And when you've reduced the risk and you find the right talent or a talent, talent that has a turnkey system, that's a lot of times that's a great hire, especially at the beginning, because
Yeah,
you're more likely to have success. So it's really, yeah, it's really, you're gaining leverage in that case if you're working with different vendors and people that can source, the right people. And that's what they do every day. Let them do. If you're in Facebook ads all day long, would you, that inside and out.
yeah.
Think of how they, in hiring and talent, they do that same thing. So you might as well like tap into what they do really, really well.
Absolutely. And I think with recruiters and myself and what I do, you form connections with candidates who are seeking jobs. And when you find an agency, you immediately have a candidate in mind where you're like, I've been in touch with that guy for the last 18 months. And he last spoke to me 2 weeks ago and he said he's looking for something, because you maintain these relationships with them. You keep those candidates engaged. And for them to fill that role for you, they're saving you all the interview time and all the screening time, and sometimes even assist you in onboarding and things like that. But also the time that I was talking about, when you hire someone and then you need to step in too much, that time drain. I think the right hire does help you do less of that, and that comes back to your vetting and how you are, whether you're attracting quality candidates or not, what your vetting process is, and do you have systems in place before you hired, or are you throwing a person at a problem? Because if it's a systems problem, a person definitely can't fix it. So I think, yeah, if you have that in place, like we discussed, if you have that training material in place and you've hired someone who's capable, you'll need to do less of that, and you can maybe wrap that up in initially weekly calls, and after that it can even be a monthly check-in when trust is established. So yeah, I think that's the goal there, to be able to have those systems and make sure your vetting suits your requirements.
Yeah, for sure.
So the last section I want to cover before wrap up is mindset. Like you said before, agency owners are oftentimes doers, and they do a specific thing, and they're not in that director mindset, and they're not in that CEO mindset. What do you think holds founders back from fully stepping into the builder role? What do you think helps them make that shift?
Yeah, for one, like not knowing how to do it is a big thing, or not seeing that modeled before. And I think like you think of the super strength of most marketer people are they're able to learn things quickly and figure it out.
Yeah,
So that's a really great skill, but you start to be like you apply that to everything. Like, well, I'll just figure it out, and I'll like
yeah,
and that just doesn't really go well. So I think it's a new mindset.
yeah,
And I think sometimes when there's a lot of motion tied to letting go.
yeah,
And a lot of, and a lot of it can be the care, like you're really careful about the work and the quality of the work, which is a good thing. So you just need systems around you and the people around you to deliver that same level or maybe even better.
yeah,
So I think, the letting go piece is really, really hard. But I think if you can look at it as, okay, if, yeah, what would happen? This is a question I always ask that sometimes the light bulb goes on is like, okay, let's say you doubled your clientele overnight. What would be the first thing that would break? And a lot of times the answer is them. So
yeah,
you just have to like get out of the day to day and think of like, okay, where is this headed long term? And can you really scale operating this way?
yeah,
Or it's going to break down. So like kind of show them the future if this keeps going this way. So you can walk yourself into the future and start to envision, okay, well, would you like to have a project manager or agency
yeah,
operations manager, an account manager? And you're not going to hire all those roles today, but what's that first piece that you can hire that's going to create a little leverage so that you can build the next thing and create a little more leverage
yeah,
and move. I think the big thing when I work with agency founders is how do we you're doing everything right now. Some of it you're really good at, some of it, a lot of it you're not. How can we spend more time in the things that only we can do
yeah,
and are actually life-giving and like you love to do? When
yeah,
you can make that transition, that's where you're creating a lot more value for everyone involved, clients, team, And that's where the magic happens, when you can make that shift. And until you let go, that you can't really do that.
Absolutely. I think that's great stuff that you've touched on in terms of mindset. I think even what you said about agency owners being marketers themselves a lot of times are kind of I'll figure it out people, I'll figure out accounts. How difficult can it be? There's expenses and there's revenue, so I can do it myself. But then every time they try to do that, they're getting very deeper and deeper into work, and they're stepping further away from the freedom goal that they have. But then also another on the opposite end, the mindset of an agency owner who might have scaled is that they'll go to the expert for the thing they want done and they'll just have them do it. And I think coaches are also a big part of it, because oftentimes you'd see an NBA player and why do they need a coach? But they do, because the coach can see, and I say this, they can see a lot of things from the sideline that you can't while you're inside the game. So I think that's a great mindset suggestion that you've given, where you should be open to going for help and support to experts rather than trying to figure it all out, because you might figure it out, but now you have that on your plate as well. So and you're further away from freedom.
Well said. Well said. That's right on.
So before we wrap up, let's bring it back to, someone listening this who feels totally stuck. They're working nonstop. They've got no time. They might have gotten some value from this, but what's the one thing you would say they need to hear right now?
I think there's two things. One would be, take a look, like what's your someday goal, or where do you want to see this be in 5 years, and get specific about it. And then the second thing would be, like I mentioned earlier, start with the first hour of your day and work on that, working towards that future.
Yeah.
And just look for those next leverage steps. What's the next thing that you can do that can provide even, if you had an hour, the first hour of your day, what's that next hire or that next system or SOP that you can put in place that can give you an hour and 15, an hour and 30.
Yeah.
And then when you work up, like if you could spend your mornings working on the agency, you're going to make a lot of progress. There's so much opportunity that you can step into.
And I think what I would say is, once you're done listening to this, or once you're done watching this, whatever you're going to do next, just record a Loom video. Just take that first step, just build out that first one, and you're doing it for your someday hire. You're not even hiring right now, and that's fine. But when you do hire someone, you have that first video today that you want to use for training that person, and you're making it so that you have to do less of this and more of growing your agency. So a quick fire round, one underrated book, or not even underrated, one book you would suggest every agency owner for growth.
Oh, there's so many. I love reading. One is They Ask You Answer. And that's a book by Marcus Sheridan. I'm big on like following like timeless principles and not just the fads. And a lot of times, the techniques that are working right now, like they're not in book form because they're already outdated. But that's one that, take the questions you're getting from your clients and turn them into content, or the conversations that you're having, and turn them to content. Now that can be external content. So like on the growth side of things, but also internal content. So like you were talking about, like with all the AI, like note takers and recorders, where you can create internal like FAQ sections, but don't waste a good conversation or an email exchange or a Slack exchange in private. If you can start to use that, it's going to help on the sales and marketing side of things, but also on the internal systems and hiring side of things. That's the biggest thing. What's inside your head, like if it stays inside your head, nobody can really implement it or take action on it. But when you can get out of your head, then things can happen. So that kind of, I think, plays in what we've kind of talked about over this time as well. So, but it also helps on the sales and marketing side as well.
That's definitely key. And any piece of material or book or reading or podcast that can help them do that, I definitely, other than what we're doing here, I recommend Diary of a CEO. That's another thing that I watch regularly, and it helps them do that. And what you said about content internally and externally, I have a new rule. if I'm on a discovery call and I don't get the sale, I'm definitely getting the content out of it. So even if that doesn't turn into a client, it's going to turn into 10 pieces of long form, short form content, because we'll be going into the challenges of an actual agency owner and what they're struggling with and how we can help them, even if they choose not to go with us. I at least get a lot of insight to create unique content that only comes from that call. And that's another thing with AI. Everyone's now coming in with ideas, and it's flooding social media. But what's missing is unique insights. So the unique insights that can only come from the call I attended, I need to capitalize on that. I need to make sure I'm using that to my advantage. And I think agency owners should do more of that as well, using that for internal trainings, even weekly calls, huddles. Let's just record this. Let's use a note taker and kind of build out training material for anyone else who comes and joins and missed our last 5 sessions because they had never joined the company at that point. They're kind of on that meeting right now if we take these notes. So I think, yeah, that's great advice. One other question I had was one freedom ritual or habit you personally swear by.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like the daily one thing is a huge part of it, and I think also like your morning routine is also that kind of like that's before your first hour of your work day, but how you start your day is how you'll end up finishing it, and commonly when things are a mess or like you feel like you're a mess, it's because like you're getting texts in the middle of the night, or the first thing you do upon waking is diving into your phone or your Slack messages from clients. So that's very reactive. So being proactive, like starting that day with your morning routine, and then that at least that first hour of the day, and build up from there. Those are the core habits that you start with momentum. I know like what is it like if you want to change the world, like make your bed, there's a reason some simple things like that, they really work because you have a sense of accomplishment. You have control over those things. Once you get into your day, a lot of times, things will come at you that are out of your control, but control what you can control, be consistent with it is what I found that's made the biggest difference for myself and others.
Absolutely. That first hour, it sets the tone, right? And I think if it can be more focused work and more of what you enjoy doing, it definitely, and grow it over time as you build freedom from some of the things that we've discussed here. And that 1 hour can, like you said, turn into 1 hour 30 or 2 hours. That's the goal. So I think with that, we're closing towards the end of our episode here. Chris, thank you so much for being on the call and sharing your insights. This was packed with a lot of valuable information that I know a lot of agency owners are going to walk away with, and this might give them some clarity or nudge them in the right direction in some of the things that help them build that first bit of freedom for them. And if you want to learn more about Chris and what he's doing at Freedom Agency, check out the links in the show notes or connect with him directly on LinkedIn. If you've got follow-up questions or ideas from this conversation, drop them in the comments, and Chris and I both will make sure we answer back or send them over via LinkedIn. We want this podcast to be shaped by real agency experiences, and if this episode hit home, support the platform. And thanks for tuning in to Inside the Agency. See you next time.